Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from Spellbinders. This is their Clear Stampin' Die of the Month Club for December. And then I'm also using this leafy 3D embossing folder, but I will show you another way to create a more texture white on white background. So that's what I am doing here. I am working on Nina 80-pound solar white cardstock. That's kind of my go-to. And I am just going to create a embossed background, but this one will be heat embossed. So I'm using that same heart image from the kit that will also be my focal point, treating my paper with my anti-static tool, and then I'm going to stamp down in some clear embossing ink. If you guys have been watching my videos lately, you know I've been really digging the pigment ink, white pigment ink, and then white heat embossing over top of it. And that will work as well. I didn't want to clean my stamp. I'm just being real. I didn't want to have to move it all over and have ink all over my hands and everything else doing this whole background. Another thing to note is I started off doing this with my paper on my sticky mat in my MISTI, and I didn't like that neither. No, I did not. So I ended up changing that too. Normally, if I am repeat stamping something multiple times, I put it on an acrylic block because I don't like having to move it all over with my MISTI. But for the embossing portion, I like being able to stamp it 2 times because that way I know I've got a good clear image for embossing. And so sometimes you just got to pick like the lesser of 2 evils. So I sucked it up and decided I was going to move it all around my MISTI. There's a T in there, Kelly. So that I could make sure I got a good impression. And this is a perfect example, this one right here. So the heart barely overhangs the outside of the MISTI. And I can't move my paper because it's stuck on this sticky mat. And I don't get a good impression because it's up against that edge. So I can stamp it a second time, and I literally just got up out of my chair and gave it really good pressure. There's that beautiful blue robe you've come to know and love. And then I was able to get a good print anyway. If you choose to use your sticky mat, don't make the same mistake that I did when I first started doing it, which is I peeled the paper off the mat. You don't want to do that. You want to peel the mat off the paper. And then for the embossing, I am using white satin pearl embossing powder instead of just plain white because, I don't know, it's fancy. It just looks fancier and I like it a lot. So I was finding an excuse to use it. And then I'll heat set that. I'll go back in. I'll stamp the rest of the images down the paper and I will heat set those as well. Before we get too far into this video, I do want to note these kits are available for purchase, but Spellbinders is also having a fire sale. That's what it's called. Isn't that fun? Fire sale. And that goes through December 18th. And there is they must be just cleaning everything out, honestly. Because there's like $3 kits in there. Like for $3. There's a bunch. I think I had to get to page 3 before I found something that was more than $1 because they have like so many embellishments. So yeah, they must be like, we're ready to clean out the warehouse and move these products to hopefully to make room for new, because they make such good stuff. But anywho, that's they're having an enormous sale for the next couple of days. So I will link that below if you're interested in checking it out. So now that this background is done, I know it's hard to see because it is, even though it's that pearl white, it's white on white, but it is there and it does add texture and some extra interest. The other way that I'm going to do it is with this 3D embossing folder. I'm using the same paper as before, same cardstock, and I do like to spritz the back of my paper. That's what you see me doing here. I apologize that the bottle is off screen. I spray the back of it so that there's no issues with the front of my card, and then I just run it through, and I got really good results. In order to add the shine, because I can't just use that pearl embossing powder one way, no siree, Bob. In order to add that shine to the raised portions, I'm just going in again with a clear sticky embossing ink. I chose to use Versamark this time just because the pad is a little bit thicker, and so it is taller than its case, and it makes it easier to swipe on things. But even with that being said, even though I used a super light hand, I did get some embossing powder in places that I didn't want, mostly on the edges. And so I'm just going in with a clean, dry paintbrush and cleaning that up. And where I needed to, after I knocked it off of like the sticky area, I just held it over my garbage can and blew it so that it went into my trash can. And then once I was done cleaning up, and you could use this to clean up, maybe you have too much on your leaves that you don't like, not just in the background. Like you could use this to clean up any embossing powder that is places you don't want it to be. And then I just heat set this as well. And then both of our backgrounds are done. You could totally add some ink blending to this before, if you want the embossing powder to sit on top of it, after, if you want the embossing powder to resist it. But either way, you could get some really fun looks with this. But because the stamps in this month's kit are more detailed, that's what we're talking about today, coloring smaller images. Because they're so detailed, I just wanted them to be interesting but not overpowering. And so I was happy with my white on white. Here, I just did like a little mock-up of the color scheme that I was thinking about to make sure I was happy with the way that it looked. And I like to include my whole process so you guys know what I'm doing here. And then I am going to stamp my images out. I chose to stamp them. It's not a no-line ink. I used Wet Cement by Hero Arts, which is a warm gray. It is probably comparative to some other people's no-line inks, but I know that it's going to be enough color that my images, being smaller, aren't going to get lost in it. And that was really important to me because there is kind of so much detail in them. And I know that these can be, for coloring, like they can kind of be a little bit overwhelming because you're like, how am I supposed to color these teeny tiny little things? And this crazy girl wants me to add dimension into it. First of all, I don't want you to. You can, I'm going to, but it's not necessary to make these very pretty. So here I just picked an array of Copic markers. That's the color palette that you saw before. And I'm just going to go in and I'm going to map out what colors I want to be what. So this is going to do two things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to give me a base layer to build on. And the second thing it's going to do is map out all of my images so that I can get a good balance of color. So here I colored the bottom pink. That's a very large flower. The top left has a larger flower. I colored that pink. But I wanted to create that visual triangle. So over here on the right, I didn't have a large flower, but I did have one small flower and this little leafy branch that had an end. That little leafy branch is supposed to be a branch, but do I care? No, I don't. I colored it pink anyway, because looking at it, once you color it pink, nobody's going to know that it wasn't the side view of a flower. So sometimes you can kind of manufacture your own reality with your images to make it work for what you have. So I chose a blue. This is more of a true blue. This is a B24. For some of my other flowers, I thought that was kind of fun to have some little blue flowers in there. I think blue is fun anytime, but you could choose any colors you like. And then the other color that I chose was like a yellow-orange color because it's the complement to blue and it works really nicely with pink. So everybody's going to be friends and everybody's going to play nice together. For the orange ones, there's only 3 flowers in this large heart, so I didn't have to worry about creating a triangle. It pretty much did it for me. And then I used the same orange color to color in the center of my larger flowers. Again, just giving me kind of a base color. For the leaves, lots of leaves in this, which is really pretty. So I chose to go with a yellow-green for the blues because the other color I'm going to use is a blue-green, and I didn't want my leaves to be competing with my bloom, so it made sense to go with a yellow-green that would complement the blue as well as complement the pink, and then use the blue-green as just kind of like the filler-inner, because it makes nice with all of the colors we picked. So yeah, that's that. I'm just going to go through and I'm going to add color to all of these images. So I have this Walmart saga that I want to tell you about. I think it's going to be like 3 story times though. And so tomorrow I have another video that I will put up that doesn't have anything to do with the Walmart. Like, I'm not going to be able to tell that well, no, maybe Saturday would be the last day. Maybe I can. Maybe I can fit it into 2 videos. Let me give it a try. So here, I just wanted to stop and pause. This is before I've added any shading, and these images are still super pretty. Okay, they're super pretty, just the one color. And you could totally stop there. I want to add some shading. And in order to do that, the easiest way to add shading to small images is pencils. It just is. Now, I'm a marker person. You know that. But I also know the limits of my markers. Could I color these images with markers and add shading? Yes, I could. But that takes an immense amount of time and an immense amount of practice. The easiest way to get successful results with small images is colored pencils. I'm using Prisma. You use whatever you have. You could even use Crayolas, like literally whatever you got. I wouldn't recommend Rose Art, but I'm biased. I don't think it's a very good product. That's just me. But you could rock them Crayolas. So for adding the shading, you want to make sure that your pencil tips are very sharp, especially when we get to the leaf portion. That will be super important. But really all I'm doing is I'm going in with my lightest color. I'm adding a little bit of shading to the petals, kind of dipping them in, also adding a little bit of shading around the center. I'm going back in and adding just a little bit of darkness where I want the shadows to be the darkest. And then I'm blending it back out with my lightest color, and that is all I am doing. These flowers, leaves, etc. do not have a lot of real estate. You do not need to do a lot to them to make them look more dimensional. So once I was done with the pink, then I moved on to the orange. And for all of these, I only used 2 colors. I used a color slightly darker than my marker for my mid-tone, and then I used a dark. So for the orange, for example, I used a yellow orange as my base for my marker. I used an orange pencil, and then it's actually called pumpkin orange, a dark orange. You could also substitute a warmer brown in there, and that would work fine as well. For the blues, again, I chose a more true blue, and then I shaded it with more of a like violet blue. I don't really have a navy. Isn't that interesting? Prisma, why would you not have that? Because I have the big daddy set. Not that you need it. You don't. But so anywho, I'm just going to go through, I'm going to add my shading mostly to the points where my petals meet each other, to where they meet their bases. And then the same thing with the leaves. I'm going to add shading where they're meeting their branches and where they're laying over top of each other. So let's go back to Saturday. Now, I want to start this story with letting you know that I understand that this is a first world problem. There are far bigger issues out there in the world than the one that I had. However, I pay for this service, and I feel like if you pay for a service, then they should in fact meet the requirements of what you are paying for. I just want to put that out there. So, I pay Walmart to have my groceries delivered, because I've always been, as long as it's been available, even before the pandemic, I've been a person who ordered my groceries online and went and picked them up. Why is that? That is because at the time I had like 4 jobs. I had a small child, and I literally didn't have time to spend 2 hours in the grocery store. Like, it saved me so much time being able to pick them up. And that was a service that my grocery store offered for no fee. Consequently, I would not be able to complain if there were any issues with it, because it was a free service. This service, one of my girlfriends told me about when I was working full-time in dispatch. She was like, dude, I got my groceries delivered. I was like, what? Who delivers groceries? And she said, Walmart. And I was like, okay. She was like, yeah, they got a 2-week free trial. So I tried it. It was great. It has been mostly great the entirety of the time I've had it, which has been since May. However, there have been 1 or 2 snafus. This weekend was way more than a snafu. So we ordered our groceries on Saturday for them to arrive. Let's go back to the card. So here you can see the difference between adding the shading and not adding the shading. It's just a little bit more bold, a little bit more dimensional. The other thing is when you're stamping the letters, they have just these branches that aren't flowers, and they're stamped solid. You could totally leave them this neutral gray, and I think that they would look fine. But if you wanted to color them, I just chose to pick one color because, like I said, they're very small. So I just went in with one color and just went right over the inking that is there. And because colored pencils are solid, opaque color, I didn't have any issues covering them up. And then from there, I will move on to the die cutting. So anywho, we ordered them on Saturday. They were supposed to arrive on Sunday between 4 and, no, I'm sorry. They were supposed to arrive on Sunday between 5 and 6. Is that right? No, 4 and 5. I apologize. Something to note on the die cutting. So this middle of the road heart is supposed to be for this You're My Forever person, but I'm actually going to use it to cut out the bigger heart because I'm going to use this heart as my O in the word love instead of actually using the O. And I wanted it to be, the reason I didn't use the sentiment portion of it is because I didn't want it to be competing with the actual sentiment I intended to use. I wanted it to fit the same flow as the rest of my other letters. And a way to, you can just kind of expand what you already have and use your set a different way. I also, once I die cut them all out and put them together, I realized it was very hard to read. So I ended up using some, I think it's Bermuda cardstock from Hero Arts, and I just traced my dies, like the outside of the dies, and then fussy cut them out to give myself a border around all of my elements. So anyway, so they were supposed to come between 4 and 5. I got an email on Sunday that said they would be delayed up to 2 hours. So I'm like, okay, 2 hours comes and goes. I have no groceries. So they're supposed to be there between 4 and 5. Finally at 8:30, I call the store. A young man answers. He says, let me transfer you to the front desk and maybe they can get you over to pick up and delivery because we're having a lot of issues with the phones back there. I said, okay. So he transfers me to the front desk. Nobody answers the phone. I let it ring. I'm not over exaggerating, for 3 minutes. Nobody answered the phone. So I call back again. I get this same young man. He says, okay, let me try again. Maybe, maybe they just didn't hear it or whatever. Okay. So he transfers me again. This time somebody answers the phone, but they don't answer the phone and say, hello, how can I fix your problem? They answer the phone and just take it off the hook to make it stop ringing. But nobody ever actually comes to the phone. So the third time I call, the same young man, who I told him I am fairly sure he is the only person working in the Walmart that day, gives me the cell phone number for the pickup and delivery. So I call that. I get somebody over there. He said, your order is picked. We're just waiting for a driver. We had an issue with the system. It's supposed to automatically reassign a driver when it gets canceled, but that didn't happen for some reason. I'm going to manually order a driver now, and then if there's any issues with that, if I have to reorder a driver again, I'll call you back. I said, okay. At 9:30, I still have no groceries. I also have no phone call. So I call the Walmart again, and again, nobody answers. And this time they're not answering the cell phone either. So I'm like, okay. So I go on the app to see if there's another way to work around this. And what I end up finding is that I can't find anything. So by this point, now I explained to you how our weekend went, and it was absolutely exhausting. And Sunday we were also very busy. So at 10 o'clock, I canceled my groceries and was just like, okay, I'll try again tomorrow. And so I did. I canceled them. The next morning, I reordered them. They were supposed to be at my house now on Monday between 5 and 6. And then at 5:40, I get an email that says they're going to be 2 hours delayed again. So Again, I wait my 2 hours. I have no groceries. I try calling the cell phone. The cell phone, nobody answers. I then look on like at the app. There's a 1-800 number. I call that 1-800 number. And the first girl, like this is the first girl that I got, and she was like, we're sorry for the inconvenience. It says that they're gonna reassign a driver. Let me send you a gift card for the inconvenience for $25. Okay. So they're gonna reorder my driver. I'm sorry, I did call before I waited my 2 hours this time. I apologize. Then I wait my 2 hours. And then I still have no groceries. So this time I get on the chat feature. And they go through the chat feature. It says, would you like a phone call? I would, in fact, like a phone call. And so this very wonderful lady, she was so super nice, called me back. I explained to her my situation. She says, let me call the store so I can figure out what's going on with your order. I said, okay, I appreciate that. So she gets back on the phone with me and she's like, I'm so sorry for leaving you on hold. I called and nobody answered. The second time I called, the line she's like, I got a hold of somebody, but then the line disconnected. I'm not 100% sure if they hung up on me or if there was actually something wrong with the phone line. And then I tried calling back again and nobody answered. She said, so at this point, I'm going to comp you 20% of your bill and I am going to, if you don't, so she comps me 20% of my bill, and she said if the groceries don't come tonight, then they'll roll over and be delivered the next day. But they only go until 10 p.m., so you only have a half an hour to wait. And I said, okay. At 9:50, my phone rings. It says Uber. I looked at Eric, and I was like, I can't believe it. Somebody actually picked him up. And so I answer the phone, and she says to me, I'm skipping a part. I apologize. I am skipping a part where I had to talk to the store again. So before I talked to the wonderful lady who was going to comp me 20%, I called the store back after, this has been going on for 3 days. How am I so confused about this story? So they didn't come. I didn't call right away. Then I did call. It was like 8:15 on the second day. And I got another young man. He told me the same thing happened, that he didn't order a driver, but he would reorder one. And if there were any issues, he would call me back in 30 minutes. He never called. I tried calling. Nobody answered the cell phone. And then I got on the chat. Oh my gosh. So much going on. So this Uber girl calls me and she says to me, I tried to pick up your order, but they said that it was canceled because too many of the things you want are out of stock. And I was like, that's really weird because the guy I talked to at 8 o'clock told me that my order was already picked and it was just waiting for a driver. I am highly suspicious what happened was she went to pick up my groceries at 10 to 10 and they were off work at 10 o'clock and they literally just didn't want to do it. So then I got on the chat, then they comped me my 20%, and she said if it doesn't come tonight, they'll do whatever. So after I talked to the Uber driver, I called them back again, and she was like literally she's like, there's nothing in stock in your order. It doesn't show canceled on my end. I don't know why she called you and said that. And I told her, I said, it's probably because that poor girl has been led astray by this situation before, and she's covering her end of it. So I will leave you with that before we launch into another Walmart saga. For the finishing of the card, you obviously saw me assemble them, put them together with their heat embossed sentiments. I did add some shimmer to them. I also added just some white gel pen dots to make them a little bit fancier. The last thing that I'm going to do is add just a little bit more shine and kind of help fill in some gaps in between the sentiments, and that is by using these little color essential gems. These are also by Spellbinders, and I used the sapphire ones because I like the blue. You guys have to tell me what you think about the combining of the teal cardstock with the navy cardstock that I didn't stay the same. That's different for me. I don't know that I mind it. I think it helps the sentiment stand out a little more. The black seemed, like I normally use black seemed too aggressive with the no line coloring. So I'd be interested to know what your opinion is about that. So that is both cards. I hope that you will head over and check out Spellbinders sale and their club kits, because they're always amazing. They're such a good deal. And then that's it. That's both cards. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I will catch you on the next video. Bye.